Welcome to Sebring International Raceway for the fourth round of the BMW Race Driver Series in its second season. It's first here on the Global SimRacing Channel, and we are getting set for two races of 25 minutes in length around what is quite a bumpy and long 5.95 kilometer racetrack. My name is Ryan Jones. Joining me in the comments box, Oshin Parker. Behind the scenes is Joe Peak using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Let's take a closer look then at this bumpy ride around Sebring with our GSRC track guide.
Welcome to Sebring International Raceway. Home to the 12 Hours of Sebring, one of the most grueling tests in endurance racing, this is a track which has earned a fearsome reputation among drivers. The circuit itself is located on the southeastern edge of the city of Sebring, Florida, and was built out of Hendricks Army Airfield shortly after World War II. 3 layouts are currently in use, ranging from 1.7 to 3.7 miles in length. The longest course, which is perhaps the most well known with it being the one used for the famed endurance race, shockingly still contains portions of the original airfield surface. It's this aspect which has become a signature feature of the track, making it extremely bumpy for racing. Sunset Bend in particular nearly shakes cars apart while they attempt to navigate the high-speed 180-degree corner. As you'd expect for the side of an airfield, there's nearly no elevation change over the course of a lap, but many of the curves are dramatically tall and unforgiving, daring drivers to glance them yet not hit them directly. Thankfully, places to pass are plentiful, including spots like the Hairpin and Cunningham. However, the many fast, sweeping turns creates a dilemma for car setup, since a vehicle that's made too stiff could wind up bottoming out on the onerous bumps. In the end, if you have the wherewithal to withstand the track's rough nature, you're likely to fare well. And since Florida fans almost always show up in huge numbers to witness this test of car and driver, you'll have plenty to impress at this legendary North American road course.
Ozzy, what more can you tell us about this racetrack?
Well, Sebring at Florida, it's bumpy. No kidding, it's a former airfield, of course it's bumpy. And it was leased basically for free from the former owners, from the guys who built the track on the one condition, and that is that the Sunset Bend, the last corner of this track, turn number 17, it shall never be repaved. So that's why that corner is so bumpy. That's why the main straight is so bumpy, and that's why first corner it's bumpy too. But despite the bumpiness, despite the challenges that the drivers face here, it is still one of the best racing circuits on this side of the Atlantic, and that means of course that it's also a welcome challenge for all of these drivers today. And it's about 6 kilometers long, 3.8 miles. It features 17 corners, and I'll tell you what, Ryan, it's gonna produce some great racing.
Certainly will, and you'll see all the action thanks to the team at Express Hydraulics, who import and stock a wide range of hydraulic accessories. You can get what you want when you want it. And Griffin Excavations, who provides you with a professional and experienced digger operator ready to help you with general earthworks, landscaping, drilling, trenching, driveways, and site clearing. And you can also get your company involved with the Global SimRacing Channel. With over 1 million impressions each and every month, there's a fantastic opportunity to get your brand seen by a broad audience. Just head to the link in the description to find out more. Let's look at how our championship looks then after 3 completed rounds of racing, and it is a 10-point lead for Antal Rafael Sabo, James Anderson second, then Gene Rollinson, Taylor Cochran, and Stefan McCartan. A few of those guys had quite some issues last time out at Zandvoort. And race details, what are we expecting today, Ozzy?
Well, Ryan, it's round 4 out of 10 of this championship. Of course, New Zealand drivers with the BMWs all the way in America. It's open qualifying for these guys, which is what's going on right now. And then we have 2 25-minute heat races, so just under half an hour per heat. And the second of those heats will be full reverse grid, meaning if you place last, if you crash into the wall, if you get caught out by Sunset Bend or Tower Corner or Cunningham or any of these sort of places and crash into the wall, here at Sebring, no worries. In the second race, you're going to be on the pole position or near the front. So that produces some pretty exciting racing, just like we saw 1 week ago in the Netherlands.
Yeah, a much easier racetrack to overtake on, Sebring, compared to Netherlands and Zandvoort. It's still up there as a reasonably high track to pass, though, so certainly will be interesting to see if the race plays out in a similar fashion. Qualifying is underway and it's halfway through. We've got just under 10 minutes remaining here in our session, and it's Mark Gibson that is currently fastest. Not a driver we've seen yet in this season. And there's actually a couple of new drivers today joining him. I think Andrew Waite, haven't seen him either. He currently sits in 5th. And Henry Thomas Kircher, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Well, he sits in 6th. So 3 new drivers doing very well. Add on to that Todd Gibson, Nathan Krang, Stefan Barker, and you've got some very competitive newcomers.
Yeah, you do. It's going to be very interesting to see which one of these guys are, or who of these guys are going to keep their pace all the way to the race, because we've seen many drivers in the past, Ryan, who are very fast in qualifying, but then when it comes to race conditions, when the push comes to shove, they can't quite hack it with the big boys. So let's see if these guys, Mark Gibson and the other fast newcomers, can bring it right up to Cockerton and enter Rafael Sabo especially, who has been the consistent force near the front all throughout the season. By the way, on car number 10, I do believe that's Kircher, because it's a German surname, but I'm not quite sure if it's meant to be pronounced Kircher or if they want it to be Kircher. But either way, it's very interesting, and I think we can call him Henry Thomas, just to be sure.
Henry there in 6th position is 6/10 away from our provisional pole held by Gibson. He just crossed the line and wasn't able to find an improvement. Reigning champ, Gene Rollinson, he crosses the line just a 2:16, so that looked like an outlap for him, or potentially a mistake. One of those two options. And then, yeah, this last corner, Sunset Bend, it is incredibly tricky. You can see the attitude of the car as it bounces over the bumps, which are almost unavoidable through there. And it's also a corner of a million lines, because you can take quite a few different approaches to getting around that corner. Cameron Freeman hasn't set a time yet, and he will not change that with his latest lap.
No, not at all. He's still one of the 2 drivers without a time. Of course, Cameron Freeman and Joshua Andrew as well. The 2 guys without a time. Joshua as well, currently outside of the server. Let's hope he can come back later on into this event. James B. Anderson, he, however, does have a time, and he's currently residing on the 4th place. Let's see how he handles this tricky Sunset Bend. The final corner of this track takes a pretty tight line through there all the way to the inside, and then washes out maybe a little bit early, and yeah, that's going to be very slow. He's going to come back to the pit lane.
Anderson closed in the gap to the championship leader last time out, Zandvoort, capitalizing on most of the rest of the field's mistakes. That very tricky circuit for Rockfest. He nabbed his first win of the season. If he wants to do that, replicate that today, he'll have to avoid making that same mistake in the race, and starting to make it maybe a little bit difficult to execute in race 1. Don't forget that reverse grid in race 2 always spices it up. And so far, Sabo has started last for every single one of our reverse grid races, courtesy of a race 1 win. At the moment, only 3rd in qualifying. Taylor Cochran and Mark Gibson, those 2 cars in front of him, and both of them are a couple cents off the road.
Yeah, so it's not the greatest qualifying yet for Sabo, but he still has 6 minutes left to improve. And I think he will find a bit of improvement at least, because he's seeing now that both Gibson and Cockerton are well into the 157s, and he doesn't want to be on the next second. That's never where you want to be as a racing driver, because if you see a barrier, whatever the barrier is, if it's a certain full minute barrier or even a full second barrier, you look at it and you come closer and closer and closer until somebody beats it. and then you want to beat it too, just to show that you're at least on the same second. And especially in a place like this at Sebring, and in conditions like this where only 2 drivers have made it to 157s, they can easily think that, okay, we are above the rest right now, and then you have rest of these guys on 158s and 59s and so on and so forth. And I don't think Sabo would be too happy to be up there with the rest of the guys. I think that's a little bit beyond him. So let's see if he can find some improvement here.
This track obviously very bumpy, as we've detailed, which adds a bit of nuance to the circuit, because apart from that, pretty much dead flat. There's absolutely no elevation change whatsoever, because, well, this place is built on the site of an old airfield, the Hendricks Army Airfield, which was a training base of B-17 pilots for about 5 years. But, well, now it's a racetrack, and it's not the only racetrack in the world that's been built on the graces of a former airfield, Silverstone, the other one that comes famously to mind. So, bit of history for you there.
Yep, a little bit. I always like history. I mean, history is always it's good to know where these tracks come from and what kind of stories they have to uphold. Especially places like Sebring. When you for the great races, you have the Sebring 12 hours, you have all the inside field at Sebring. So why not bring that up sometime? Why not, talk about all these wonderful events that have been there in the past, to celebrate the past and also be excited for the future as well. I think this is one of the finest racetracks that America has, simply because, okay, it's simple, it's flat, but it's perhaps the best proof that you don't need elevation change to have a great circuit.
Nonetheless, it's still pretty decent. That F1 race you mentioned was actually the first ever US Grand Prix, held in 1959.